here. Wanted to talk to you guys for a few minutes about a real common question we think ask. So many people ask, how and why does a child's brain change during the course of a care plan? And if you're not familiar with how chiropractic care affects a child's brain, I want to go through and talk with you guys about this because this is a simple way to go and break this down. I think it will help you have a better understanding of why kids, when they go through chiropractic care, specifically the type of care that's delivered in offices like ours, neurochiropractic for kids with neurodevelopmental challenges. So let's take this in kind of a step-by-step order. Number one, the brain is stuck. The brain is stuck in a certain pathway. A symptom set, the brain is stuck in a certain pattern. When the brain is like that, it's hardwired, right? The brain has been going through a progressive level of stress that is wired the brain and the central nervous system into this pattern. There's nothing at this point that's been able to go and alter the brain's ability to handle the stressors, change the sensory input, get the brain out of the current state that it's in, change the way the brain is reacting. So what ends up happening, the brain is now struggling, right? It's having a hard time adapting. It is progressively losing ground, right? We look at a metric called an HRV, which is an adaptability measure, and we see the HRVs low and getting lower, not rebounding and recovering like they're supposed to. The symptoms are stuck, progressively getting worse, and we see this cycle, right? And it tends to progress for many years, and many children, they're going through a state where there's some early symptoms often. Maybe it's they're caught as a baby or terrible sleepers, sort of see things begin to pop up like temper tantrums, maybe they're sensory seeking, and it snowballs. And as the years progress, the symptoms become bigger, they become more significant. Maybe the temper tantrums become longer, maybe the outbursts become worse, maybe there are GI issues. You name the challenges, they begin to snowball and mount one on top of the other. And so what ends up happening is that when a child goes into chiropractic care, the adjustment is a brand new stimulus to the brain, meaning the current state the brain is in, you start getting adjusted, it begins to change the brain, and it begins to refire and rewire new pathways within the central nervous system. There's a couple of important things to keep in mind about why this works. When you say, for example, you have a child with a neurodevelopmental challenge like ADHD, okay? The brain has been stuck in a persistent state of an underlying sensory processing problem, an underlying imbalance in the autonomics where there's this really big, profound fight or flight response, and a very low tone of what's called the vagus nerve, or the parasympathetic system, the part of the brain that calms the central nervous system and helps to organize the input, be logical, focused, organized, all the things necessary to be a successful student. So when we start doing the adjustments, the first and foremost goal is to get the brain to begin to adapt. We do with frequency and repetition of the adjustments over a period of time. Sometimes we add in other things, but the adjustment is to the core because the research on adjusting shows that the most profound effect that it has is on areas like the cerebellum, which is the organizer of the brain, and the frontal lobe, which is where all the stuff that we need to be a successful student comes from. It's where we organize visual stimulants. It's where we are able to organize our thoughts, regulate our social emotional responses. It's where we're able to perform math and read, and all of our language centers live on the frontal lobe. So we have to get that area of the brain to start to change and adapt in a different way. One of the ways that the adjustment changes this is it amps up the parasympathetic nervous system and suppresses the sympathetic nervous system response. And the sympathetic nervous system is shown in many research studies to be overly active, and the tone of a nerve called the vagus nerve. And if you've ever heard anything about neurodevelopmental challenges, the vagus nerve is the thing. The vagus nerve is always underperforming in kids that have sensory issues, autism, ADHD. You name the sensory or the neurodevelopmental challenge, there is low vagal tone that is going to be associated with this. It's been shown in numerous studies. So the adjustment starts to ramp up vagus. By ramping up vagus, you ramp up frontal lobe. As you ramp up frontal lobe, the brain begins to refire and it begins to rewire. And you start to establish new pathways and patterns within the brain as the brain is now getting stimulated and it is allowing it to begin to reorganize in the way that it needs to. What ends up happening is that these pathways continue to stay lit up and become hardwired. The more times that you light up these pathways, like exercise, the more times that you light up these pathways, the more active they become, the more hardwired they become into the brain operating system. It's like when you update your iPhone or your Android or whatever. You go through, you get the adjustment, the brain gets a whole bunch of new sensory input, it activates different areas of the brain that haven't been active before, and the more times that you do that, the more that those areas of the brain start to become hardwired into an operating system for yours or your child's brain. And they start to become more and more active on a daily basis. And then what we see is symptomatic improvement. That's a big deal. You have to light the pathways up first, and then often enough, or the symptoms begin to improve. Because if the brain does not get enough stimulus over a long enough period of time, it does not go from being something that is a subconscious change to a conscious level change, where we see outward expression of changes in the brain and the nervous system, right? If you're someone who deals, like, say, for example, with anxiety, the way that you change anxiety responses is you have to get an area of the brain called the amygdala calmed down, right? If it's just true anxiety, like you've been through stress, it's triggering the anxiety responses, and you have a hard time regulating your emotions. If it's just a straight amygdala-based stress response, and not everyone has it that way. There are others where it's triggered by things related to other areas of the brain, like the cerebellum, that are more related to stimulus and motion. While if you have, things like motion sickness and anxiety, those two are oftentimes leading to a conclusion that it may not just be straight, like, emotional stress-related anxiety. It may be something that's being more triggered by imbalances in an area that we call the cerebellum, the way that it's regulating emotional responses. Whole different can of worms, but just something to think about. So over time, as these pathways get stronger and stronger and stronger, what ends up happening is they suppress those pathways. So if you have a child that's got ADHD, right, what you tend to see then is as they get adjusted, we tend to see improvements in focus and attention and impulse control and sensory processing, and all the things that you see with traditional ADHD. And we start to see a calmer child, a more focused child, a more organized child, better impulse control, better emotional regulation, better response to sensory input, all this stuff. And oh, by the way, their test scores tend to go up in a hockey stick effect, because now the brain has uploaded new software, and now it's using new software. The old software is being replaced, and the brain is now able to run a different program on a daily basis. Hopefully that makes sense in the way that I explained this. And so as we progress, one of the biggest things that we shoot for then is to get the nervous system to become stable. And this is a huge thing, because if the nervous system never stabilizes, none of these things become hardwired into the brain, and we're not able to maintain the changes. And so that's ultimately the goal, is to get the brain stabilized, so that when we do the care plan, whether it's adjusting only or we add other things in, it's to stimulate the brain enough so that these patterns become stable, so they're hardwired in. So now, as we back down in the level of care that we provide, we don't regress. The nervous system is able to handle the day-to-day tasks that it has to do, to whether it's attention or focusing or managing stress or regulating our emotions, whatever it might be. If we do things with enough frequency, the brain fires and rewires, and it becomes firm and stable, and then the old pathways go away. And we're able to build up more and more and more momentum in the brain's ability to handle the new tasks that we're asking to, like focusing in school for longer periods of time, or regulating our emotions in some situations where there's stress, or being able to stay logical instead of having a temper tantrum or a meltdown. Hope this all makes sense for you. If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments wherever you're watching this. I know we've got people who are watching here on Facebook and on YouTube, and people who are watching us on Instagram and whatnot. So guys, if you have questions about this, please feel free to drop things. More than happy to get back to these. We can make more videos about this. I hope this is helpful. Do me a favor, if this was valuable to you, hit the like or subscribe button wherever you're listening to this or watching this, and let us know what we can do to provide more value and content for you by putting questions into wherever you're watching us. So you can DM us, you can send us emails at info@leaffamilychiros.com. However we can help, we are here to create value for you guys. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Dr. Scott Haggerty with Leaf Family Chiropractic. God bless you guys. Happy